Hi, I'm Cyd. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Dan, for inviting me. And I was just sitting here thinking, the last time that I shared my story was at our home group meeting when we did our very first Zoom meeting, and it was really hard to do that kind of a meeting. But then I'm sitting here nervous, just like always. So I'm glad that Zoom hasn't taken away that element of speaking. So anyway, I just wanted to say I'm glad to see everybody here. There's a lot of people here that I know, and thank you for showing up. Um, I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think I'm going to get pretty emotional through most of this. But anyway, my sobriety date is May 10th, 1996. And I'm finally more sober than I was a drinker, because I drank for about 23, 24 years. I started on purpose drinking when I was 13. I drank. My dad would give me beers, or I'd just take sips of alcohol at parties, things like that, things everybody did. He used to get tired of me asking for sips of his beer, so he finally just gave me my own can. And I don't know if that made me an alcoholic, but I have pictures to prove that it happened, and it's kind of sad. Anyway, I grew up, I'm from Arizona. I was born in Phoenix, and I moved to Yuma. That's where I grew up. Those were my formative years. That's where I got to do a lot of crazy drinking. And I did some moving around because of my irritable, restless, and discontent nature, even though I didn't have a name for it until I got into Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know that was what was wrong with me. In fact, I didn't even know I was an alcoholic until I got here. And then you guys told me what the symptoms were. But I moved from Yuma. I went over to San Diego because everybody who lives in Yuma has to move to San Diego and live near the beach. That's the goal. You get out of high school, that's what you do. So I did. I lived like a block from the beach. And the whole time that I lived there, I never went to the beach once. I was too busy drinking and doing other things and hanging out with, people who weren't supposed to be in the United States legally. And I just thought that was my crowd. And I used to drive on the interstate from San Diego up to Solana Beach to go to work every day on the Interstate 5. And it never bothered me, it just never bothered me. But now as a sober person, it's just, I can't even believe that I even did that, because it scares me to death. We used to go down, across the border and hang out with the surfers and do outside issues and lots of drinking, and then come back across the border. And, there's so many times that's just how I lived. And I just never thought anything different about it. I moved back from San Diego. I moved back to Yuma, and then I ended up in Phoenix. And my next door neighbor was a dealer, so he and I got to be really good friends. And so we would watch the sun come up every morning after drinking and doing other things. And so one day I found out that, he started shooting that up, and I thought, oh man, I need to get away from this. I am not that kind of a person. I don't need to be hanging around with this bad influence. And so I moved up to Flagstaff, and I got a roommate, and she drank just like I did. And so we would be in the bars 2 to 3 times a week and on the weekends. And the interesting thing about living with her is that our landlord lived right next door to us, And that was also her boss, who was a justice of the peace for Flagstaff, who also was our connection for our outside issues. So, you know, it was a very nice relationship. But it's also where I met my first husband, was in a bar in Flagstaff. It's called Shaky Drake's. I'm not sure if it's still there, but the reason why it was so great is they had live music 7 days a week, and the floors were sticky, so you knew that it was a real bar. And the funny thing was I told my roommate, I said, do not let me talk to anybody tonight. I just want to drink. I don't want anybody to bother me. So just help me out here. And she did her best, and I met my first husband that night. And so that's how I ended up down in Tucson. That's where I live, is in Tucson. So then that husband and I moved to California. We moved to outside of LA to seek our fame and fortune. And I decided that I didn't like that. So I moved back to Tucson, and I left him there, and we ended up getting a divorce. And, you know, I just did a lot of moving around and craziness. You know, I came from alcoholism, and, you know, I never wanted to be like the family that I came from, but they also fascinated me too. I remember as a kid watching the men get together, and they would drink and smoke cigarettes, and they'd get on the floor and they'd throw dice and they'd gamble. And I just thought that was just amazing thing to do. So I gravitated toward them, even though I didn't want to be like them. But I ended up being just exactly like them. And so anyway, when I moved back to Arizona, I thought, well, maybe the reason why I feel like, you know, there's something wrong with my life, but I didn't know what it was. And I absolutely did not think drinking had anything to do with what was wrong with me. So I thought, well, I grew up on rock and roll. That must be it. So I'm going to start going to the country bars, because maybe listening to country music will be something that helps me straighten my life out, right? And so anyway, I started hanging out at the country bars, and that's where I met my second husband. And I also didn't see a pattern to any of this. And this person that I met doesn't drink, hates people who drink, but that's where he finds all of his wives, is in this bar. So I think I was number 4 wife or number 5 wife when all was said and done. But anyway, so I thought, oh, well, he doesn't drink, he likes to dance, maybe this will straighten me out. You know, maybe I'll become this grown up. And so anyway, we decided to get married. Well, we lived together, and then we decided to get married. And what happened in that relationship was, and again, I didn't know this until after I got sober and I started doing some inventory. You know, people talk about, you know, certain people make them not drink, or they say you can't drink. And I'm like, well, gosh, I can't imagine that. But that's exactly how I lived. I used to hate to come home. And also too, he hated the smell of whiskey on my breath. And that really pissed me off, because I love to drink whiskey. And anyway, we decided we were gonna get married, but we were gonna have a baby. And I got pregnant right away. And I ended up losing my baby at about 4.5 months. And we just didn't have the tools to get through that. We just didn't know how to get past that kind of loss. And what ended up happening is I moved out of the house. We were going to get a divorce. And I had been moved out of the house for maybe a week. And I started feeling really sick. And I worked for the fire department as an EMT, and everybody was sick at the fire station. So I thought I just had what they had. But I go, well, you know, how long did you guys stay sick? And they were like, well, you know, 24 hours, whatever. And I go, that's interesting. So then I was also going to school at the time, and I walked into the kitchen, or, you know, where they serve food. And I immediately got sick, and I knew what was going on. It was like I had the 9-month flu, and I was pregnant again. And so we were not together the whole time I was pregnant. And we have a son together. He's going to be 30 years old. And that's what happened from that relationship, is we got to have this incredible kid. And we're friends with each other. You know, we're not close or anything, but at least we have a relationship if we need to deal with anything that goes on with our son. And I'm grateful for that. But it was really sad that none of that worked out. But also, too, I was an alcoholic. And I didn't drink through my pregnancy with Dylan until like the very end. You know, I just really wanted to have a drink. And he's not an alcoholic either. My son's not an alcoholic, or he doesn't appear to be. But so that relationship ended. And nothing changed. I wasn't sober. I was drinking, and I was doing the things that I always did. And I was, the kind of job that I do is the same job that I've done since I graduated from high school. I work in real estate, and I still work in real estate. And I met this person who was in real estate, and he was a razzle dazzle kind of guy, you know, and he really caught my attention. And we started going out, and he was the kind of person that I didn't like him at all, but I couldn't not be in a relationship with him. And we dated, and it was a horrible relationship. It was emotionally abusive. It was all of those things, but I had no idea what was wrong. You know, I really had no idea. And I drank a lot, and I kept drinking a lot. And I remember that we would go places, and that was our thing. We just drank together. We ended up getting engaged, which is the weirdest thing. Well, I guess it's not weird. Most people would understand it that are in Alcoholics Anonymous. But the outside world, if you were to say, well, this is my almost husband number 3, and I don't like him at all, but I'm going to get married to him. And it's like the outside world doesn't understand that. But it's like, that's what we do. And I got engaged to him. And then things just kept getting worse. And we bought a house together, a huge house over on the west side of town. We bought horses. You know, we had all this stuff that, you know, on the outside just looks like, man, this is the answer. You know, this really is a grown-up world I'm living in now. I have this big house. I've got a good job and horses. I mean, you know, how romantic is that? I didn't know a thing about horses. And I just remember one night, and I'm so grateful for this relationship, because I just remember one night he left to go out with his buddy, And I was mad that he went out. And so I'm drinking and smoking cigarettes and waiting up and waiting up and waiting up. And my son lives with me. You know, we live in this big house and it's just the two of us. And, you know, finally I went to bed, and then in the morning, the phone rings and I realized that he hadn't come home yet. And I'm like, well, what the hell? And the phone rings and it's him. And he goes, I'm in jail and I need you to get me out. And I thought he was kidding. You know, I truly did not take him seriously. So I put the phone down and I went and got my cup of coffee and got some more cigarettes, and then got back on the line to hear what he had to say. And he goes, no, really. He goes, I'm down at Pima County Jail. He goes, I shot somebody last night. And I'm like, ugh. And he goes, you got to help me get out. And so he gave me all the details of what had happened. And so they were going to have a hearing that day down at the courthouse, and that they did a video hearing. So I went down to the courthouse to kind of get an idea of what was going on. And so I'm sitting in this courtroom, and this truly is a foreign place for me, because up to that point, you know, I had never been arrested, you know, none of that kind of stuff had ever happened to me. So I had no working knowledge of that. And then I'm sitting there, and then he comes up on the screen to talk to the judge. And as soon as he did, there's all these people in the courtroom with me. They don't know who I am, but they know who he was. And they said, he's a dead man, you know, blah, 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 and all of this. And I'm thinking, how the hell did I end up here? I am not like that. How did I end up like this, and why? And I was petrified. And I got home, and, you know, when they publish things in the paper, they basically put all the information about you in the newspaper so people can find you. And I had death threats on my phone. I had like 3 death threats on my phone. And so I called my ex-husband, the father of my son, and said, can you please come, can I bring Dylan over and can he stay with you for a while? This is what's going on. And you know what? This was one of the first miracles of Alcoholics Anonymous, even though I had no idea, is that he said yes, and he didn't hold it against me. You know, he could have just said yes and kept my son forever, you know, because where I lived was not a safe place. It wasn't safe for me, and it definitely wasn't safe for him. We lived out in the middle of nowhere. Anybody could have found us and caused harm, but that did not happen. But what the reason I'm talking about this is the other day I was talking with one of my sponsees and just talking about some of the insanity of alcoholics. And that event, I ended up having to negotiate with the people that this guy had shot. And it was a fight, and he shot down at the ground to get people to go away. But what happened is he hit somebody in the leg, and the person he hit was the girlfriend of this gang member, this motorcycle gang leader. It was his girlfriend, and he wasn't very happy about his girlfriend getting shot. And we ended up having to go into negotiations with those people, and we paid them money so they wouldn't kill us. And, you know, back then, that just was normal life. That was just that wasn't out of the ordinary. But to think back as a sober person now, that's insanity. And I can't, and so I had to ask my father for money to do that. And I can't even imagine what it must be like as a parent to hear your child say, hey, Dad, can I have some money? Because these people want to kill us. Can I have some money to pay them off? As a parent, I can't picture hearing that. But that's what happened, you know, that's what happened. And he went to jail and I got him out of jail and he came home and I thought things would be wonderful and they weren't, you know, they just got worse. So I moved out and thank goodness, because what happened was my next to my last drunk was I had started drinking during the day while I was driving with my son in the car. And all of those things were things that I thought, well, that's not normal. You know, I don't usually drink like that. And, you know, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to drink in bars and I'm going to do it on purpose. But this is something that was just kind of subtle. And I just started doing it and drinking during the day. And so I went to a party for work and I started drinking a lot, and I drank a lot at the party. And it was up at the Skyline Country Club. And they have really skinny roads up there. And all I know is I decided I was going to leave. And they came in, the valet brought my car. And all I know is I remember seeing me get in the car and not being able to stop me from driving. And I knew I just knew I was going to die that night, because I got out on Interstate 10 and I couldn't stop driving. And I knew I wasn't in any condition to drive. But I made it home. And that wasn't my last drink, but that was the drink that I told my counselor about. And I'd been going to a counselor for years, but I finally told him, I said, you know, this is what happened to me the other night. And he was really shocked because he's in recovery for something else. And he goes, I can't believe that you and I have not talked about your drinking before tonight. And I told him what happened. And what he said to me, and I can remember it so well, is he goes, do you think you have a problem with alcohol? And I said, maybe I do. I don't know, but maybe I do. And he goes, would you be willing to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, yes, I would be willing to do that. And I had no idea what any of that meant. All I know is that, you know, my dad was the alcoholic. He should go to AA. I told him so, even though I didn't know anything about what AA was about, but he should go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so he said, all I can tell you is that if you don't do something different, your life will only get worse. It's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And what I remember is realizing that my life had been getting worse and worse all the time, and I'd just been letting it happen. And I just felt like what was inside of my soul was going away. I was becoming this empty person who had nothing to give anybody. And so I went home that night, and, you know, not that my life was unmanageable or anything, but I was living with a girlfriend at the time, at that night. And my son and I were sharing a little twin bed, and we were living in her apartment. And I sat down on the couch and I just started crying. And she goes, what's the matter? And I go, I might be an alcoholic. And I was so sad that I might be an alcoholic. And I said, but I'm really happy because I might be an alcoholic, because it's the first place. It's the first time I ever felt hopeful about maybe this might be where people can tell me what's wrong with me. Because I knew there was something wrong, but it wasn't obvious to me because I lived and hung out with people who drank and acted like me. So it wasn't like abnormal. My behavior was not abnormal, not with the people I hung out with. And so I went to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I had one of my girlfriends go with me because I was terrified. And I had no idea what you guys did at these meetings. And I was really nervous. But I remember that the moment I walked in, I felt like I finally found the room I was supposed to be finding. You know, I always felt, even before I ever drank one bit, I always felt like I was, like I didn't fit in and I didn't know how to live life. You guys all knew how to be grown-ups and I didn't. I mean, I was 32 years old. You'd think, you know, I would be a grown-up by now, and I wasn't. You know, I just didn't know how to. I mean, I was more grown up when I was 13 than when I was 32. You know, I thought I was completely in charge of my life at 13. And I was doing way more things than a 13-year-old should ever do. And I was doing those things, but then at 32, it's like I have no idea how to even function. And you know, I didn't know alcohol was my problem because I had always had a good job. I always paid my bills. I had a car. I had a place to live. I had my child. They weren't taking him away from me. So there weren't any outside things that were saying, you got to look at this. This is a mess. You are a mess. And so that's why I say I'm grateful for that relationship, because it completely brought me to my knees, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. It really did. If I hadn't experienced that relationship, I don't know if I'd be sober yet. I might be dead. I might be all of those things. I have no idea, but I'm grateful that I experienced it, because that turned me over to an answer that I'd been looking for all my life. And I just know that when I went to AA, and the first meeting I went to, you know, they talk about being a, you know, if you want to be a sponsor, you need to get a sponsor, you know, all those things that makes no sense to a person who comes in for the very first time. You know, what the heck is a sponsor? You know, and but I love the fact that my very first meeting, they said, oh, you know, a newcomer's the most important person here. And I was so full of myself that I thought, see, they need me. I'm coming back again because they need me, because I'm a newcomer. They said I'm the most important person. So I'm going to come help them out again tomorrow. And I did. I got a sponsor that day. And, you know, she was my very first AA resentment too, you know, because she goes, you need to go to a meeting every day. You need to call me every day. You can't drink in between meetings. And again, remember, I'm 32 years old. I'm a grown-up. And I looked at her like, who the hell are you? I didn't say that, but that's how I felt. And then I did exactly what she told me to do. I called her every day. I did all the things that she said, and she helped me at the very beginning of my sobriety. And then I got another sponsor after that who helped me discover what my higher power was. She would help me understand. She'd go, just act as if you know what's going on. Just pray about it. Just pray to be a woman, a sober woman with integrity, you know, all of these things. And I did all of those things. And she would always remind me, you know, you're not in charge, Cyd. Who's in charge? And I'd have to say God, but I'd say it like snarling. And then after a while, I would say God and just get it, because I felt it. And then I got another sponsor who walked me through the big book. We went through all of the big book. And then my next sponsor I had her for about 10 years. And she helped me. She, you know, I watched what she did. She was married, she's married, you know, and she had a lot of issues going on. And I would just pay attention to how she got through those things, because I watched people in the rooms. You know, and if you came in and you shared what's going on with you, and you shared the whole story, I trusted what you were talking about, not just life's good all the time, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And so we worked together for a really long time. And then the sponsor I have now, her and I have crossed paths for quite a few years in AA. And then one day I was just thinking, I needed to get another sponsor, and for various reasons. And then all of a sudden, her name just came into my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because I've watched her for a long time, and she's the type of person that she loves Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's like, that's what I want. I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I want to share it with another person. And so her and I are working together and getting to know each other and just loving Alcoholics Anonymous. And what has happened though, also is that, I'm married again. This is my third time I've been married. And this time I didn't meet my husband in a bar. I met him at a Alcoholics Anonymous assembly in Phoenix, because one of my sponsors at the time said, you need to figure out what's going on in AA. And I didn't want to do that. And I did it anyway. And I just remember going up there and meeting this person and thinking, oh, he's a nice guy, that's cool. And that was it. And then we just kept crossing paths when we got back down to Tucson. And I dated him. I dated him for 2 years, and then I got married to him. That's a first. I've never dated anybody that long in my life. And we've been married, well, Dave can tell you, but I think it's about 20 years. I don't even know for sure. But anyway, what's cool is that we have a relationship, and we both are in recovery. And I've never had that. I've never had a place where I can be myself and have solutions all at the same time. And the solutions are not about drinking or doing drugs or running away. I mean, I've always run away. If things were awful, I left. People didn't break up with me because I was gone before that happened. I left. And this isn't happening this time. We have a relationship based on sobriety and emotional sobriety, and it's wonderful. Not every day. It's not always wonderful, but it's something I can depend on and I trust. And my sponsees and my sponsor and I had just started this thing. We're reading out of the grapevine, and we're reading the book Making Amends. And boy, that is really is really creating another layer to look at, and I'm grateful for that, because right now, I'm the person, and I know other people are too, especially if you're in any kind of service. I'm used to doing service in person, out loud, in front of you, touching you guys and hugging you, and I miss that. I miss that so very much. And so this is the next best thing. And I have to respect the people that are getting sober right now, because some of these people, their very first meeting experience is virtual. It's not in person. And so I have to respect that that's their experience right now. And to be there for them as much as I can, and not be negative about the fact that we're doing Zoom instead of in person. I mean, thank God we can do this. And but the amends part, all the steps are important, but the amends part has been like the most magical thing. And one of the amends that happened for me, and most people know about this, is I hadn't talked to my sister for over 10 years. She lives in the same town as me, and we didn't see each other. We didn't talk to each other. And then I kept thinking, oh, I'm just gonna give up on her. And my sponsor at the time said, no, don't do that yet. Excuse me. And So I wrote her one final letter and asked her if we could get back together. And right before Christmas, a few years ago, she called and left a voice message saying she'd like to get back together. And so little by little, we have gotten back together. I would consider her my best friend now. And the one miracle is she came to my home group to listen to me speak. And when and this is when we could be in person. And they asked, are there any visitors? And she introduced herself. And she said, I'm so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'd never heard her say that before that day. And so here's my sister and me in the same room of Alcoholics Anonymous sharing the solution. And it was just awesome. And anyway, I'm losing my voice, but I'm so grateful to be here. There's so much I could say because I haven't talked in so long, but I'm just happy to see you guys and grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous more than I can even say. And I just love you guys, and thanks very much for being here.